Welcome back to another edition of Uncle Andy Presents. This week, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. We're going to get to know Uncle Andy personally, a bit about where he came from and how he developed some of the thoughts and feelings that he shares with you each week. All right, Uncle Andy, what do you got for us?
Well, I'm here wearing my tinfoil mask because I believe. I truly believe. And I'm here to tell you that you should believe too. So I've also got my other virtue signaling. I don't know if you can appreciate this. My stormtrooper armband mask, which shows that I am actually a very good person. And you should listen to me, because good people like me should be listened to. You know what I'm saying? Enough of this rot. Okay, well, that was unfunny. Moving on. Okay, well, just decided to talk about why anyone should listen to me and why anyone would want to listen to me. And maybe you need to know a little bit about me. And I'm an expat. I'm living in an unnamed Latin American country. I left in my early 20s, and I always wondered why I had left, and I gradually got answers. And part of it was because I really couldn't abide by what was going on in the States. And what that was, it was the march of this strident liberalism. And you say, oh, yeah, no, that's, revisionism. No, it's not. See, I grew up in the Unitarian Church. And that's a mindfuck. That is a real mindfuck. So I'm growing up in the 60s and 70s. And you got to understand that what I was seeing is what you're seeing now. I was seeing it back then. That is a complete abandonment of and a divorce from the American project. And that is the values and the virtues of being, having a sense of national pride, of being an American, were all being undermined. But it was happening 20, 25 years before the Obama breakdown of culture, where everything really was fundamentally changed, and we allowed the insanity to just bubble to the surface and give us what we've got now. We've got a population that's completely brain dead. Most people believe in this coronavirus nonsense. See nothing wrong with sending all the healthy population into quarantine. Don't understand that that's a complete inversion of everything that's ever been done in the history of mankind. They go right along with it. And then, a week later, drop it when a black guy gets, dies in custody, and then think it's great to go around kneeling before black people haranguing you in the street. And that what your duty is to kneel down. And so I saw this coming, 40 years ago, and left and said, no, I want to go to a conservative place. I want to go to a place where there are values. Now, when I was a kid, maybe I couldn't articulate it, but I looked at it and just said, this is complete horseshit. Now, what I want to do is read you what the Unitarian Church represents, and this is what they call their 6 sources. And I was brought up in this, all the while believing they can't be serious, but all the while being sort of, an experimental child in the Unitarian Universalist summer hell. So let's listen to what this religion is supposed to be about. So 6 sources. 1, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Okay, it's all claptrap. I mean, that you should get ready. What this means, it means nothing and anything at the same time. So that transcending mystery and wonder. Which one? I have no fucking idea. 2, words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Well, this is the social justice creed, the appealing to foreigners, appealing to other cultures, and a complete, abandonment of your own, your loyalty to your own people and to your own culture, which is, among Unitarians, it's just completely undermined. 3, wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Oh, yes. So again, an appeal to the, an exogenous appeal to outsiders, to the others. 4, Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Complete and total horse crap. The Christian teachings are diametrically opposed to the Jewish teachings. This hyphenation of Judeo-Christian values is something the Unitarians are responsible for. Shut up, telephone. 5, humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. Well, Unitarians are the most idolatrous people I know. It's all about, love, understanding, tolerance, get as far away from racism and the Holocaust as possible. They're completely haunted by all these ideas, and they're the worst possible virtue signalers that you can imagine. And they are at the root of a lot of what we're seeing now. I'll get to that in a minute. And 6, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions. Earth-centered, which means not spiritually oriented, not transcendental. It's earth, Gaia, not the God in heavens. Okay, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us in the harmony with the rhythms of nature. So this is all animism, a lot of Eastern claptrap, and this is what informed my growing up when my parents, my mother, Southern Baptist, my dad, a Roman Catholic from Minnesota. They left, their respective churches and joined the Unitarian Church in the early 60s. I guess I began going to Sunday school in like 65, 66, as a small child. And, very soon, the indoctrination set in. By the time I was, a young teenager, I was in the LRY, Liberal Religious Youth. So it's a secular religion. And you should understand that Unitarianism, it emerged with the Universalists in the early 60s. And both
Unitarians and their impact.
Well, that's why I called my Twitter feed Recovering Unitarian. So most of my life is about, recovering from really a kind of child abuse. I mean, that Unitarian creed, which is nothing and everything at the same time, was interpreted by the parents and members of the church to just experiment on your children. And what that meant was a lot of license. So they're also influenced by the Skinnerian revolution, you know, Summerhill, O'Neill, and all these nut jobs, who were all again, who posited this idea that zero guidance. Zero guidance. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating, in so many words, that we'll just become moral and by being left on our own and to learn at our own pace and all this rot. Meanwhile, you're in a public school that hasn't, fortunately, has not bought into all this crap, but was gradually buying in. By the time my little brother got to school, they'd taken the walls out of the public school. They had an open school. And it was a complete zoo. It was a complete zoo. A din of noise and racket and kids running wild. And I remember visiting one time and going, "Oh my God, what did they do to you, little brother?" So he was about 10 years behind me in age. And that was the public schools. But the Unitarians were already doing that. So all of this nut job, radical equality, tolerance, sexual freedom, find your own way, hyper individualism, was adopted in the 60s in the Unitarian Church. By the early 70s, I was going to conferences, which were basically just orgies. They were teenage orgies where we would rent a camp and invite other young people who would hitchhike there and get together 200 people, and basically have a Woodstock every summer. One of the infamous ones was a conference in North Carolina in a place called Triangle. And it was just dropping acid and running around naked and boinking. And this was a conference. And this was all...
and you were there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And this was all sanctioned by the parents and the minister. And the minister would drop by. And so basically, they were just running an experiment on the kids. So a lot of this, I think, is, well, I have my opinions about them. I mean, children need guidance and whatnot, and so a lot of my life has been to recover from this. And part of the recovery was, well, going off to college and quitting all that, and not being a member of that anymore, and getting a liberal arts education where before all the gender bullshit came in, and getting a new grounding, and then cutting ties with all of those people and coming to Mexico and just setting up my life out on my own. So, and then, trying to understand it gradually, and, talking to my father about it, from time to time. And interestingly, I remember on a visit, I was up there and I asked my mom, "So what's going on with the church?" Innocently I asked, "What's going on with the church?" She says, "Oh, we're not going anymore." And I go, "Oh, yeah?" And she said, "Oh, they're so kooky." So, they'd seen through it, but they'd already put me through the ringer. I think my little brothers escaped. I was the experimental one, the subject of the experiment. So,
Yeah, I was if you don't mind me interjecting, I mean, you have an older brother who was in active service during Vietnam, and right down to your youngest sibling who's at least 10 years younger than you. So I'm just wondering how this, how this impacted each of them a little bit differently. And so it sounds like you got the heart of it.
I got the meat of it.
You have a sister as well, right?
Yeah, and what she did is she played grown up and didn't go to any of the youth activities. So she would go to the main service while I was in Sunday school. Now, here's an anecdote. So you see how tremendous this is and what was going on. So you have this quaint Unitarian church in Hillsdale, Chicago, well-heeled, houses designed by Frank Lloyd Wright and in the neighborhood, and we would go out and look at them. Oh, that's so cool. I mean, it's so forward-looking. And but these are, stodgy, conservative old neighborhoods. The chapel looks like a Christian chapel that you'd see in New England, the spire and everything. And they're up there listening to the minister, denounce Vietnam and, talk about universal love and the wisdom of Buddhism. And you're sitting in pews, just like in New England. You have a hymnal in front of you, no Bible, by the way. And in the annex building, which is modern, we got the Sunday school. And really, it is a parallel school. It even looks like a public school. So we would have our liberal religious youth meeting, and we're young teenagers, 13, 14, 15. And, it came down the grapevine that the John Birch Society had a message, a call-in message, and you could hear them denounce the Unitarian Universalists for showing pornography in Sunday school. And we howled with laughter. Oh, that's not true. Except that it was true. I was there. No, I mean, it was all done under the guise of sex education. But I was 13 and being shown explicit sex in the church, in the church annex, with, full frontal and boinky penetration and it would be done, I suppose, in porno terms, tastefully. It wasn't spank that ass kind of porn and dirty talk. It was all kind of hippy dippy, but it was explicit sex. So I was, being hyper stimulated at an age where my inner thoughts were, and I guess it was a leftover from a previous education where, am I ever going to be with a girl, 13, 14? So maybe when I'm 20 and 22 and I have a house. And by the time I was 15, some of the, the girls in the group obliged us. So, so it was an accelerated telescoping of sexual initiation. I mean, completely inappropriate. And I think it damaged a lot of people. It damaged me, and it hurt my ability to pair bond. And so so it took me time to be able to, really separate the sexuality from the pair bonding. And that job is never done. But I was able to have, let's say, 2 really long-term relationships. But even at that, 2 is 1 too many, right? I mean, this is not the way it's supposed to be done. And now, of course, I'm single again. And this damage done, I think it's even worse in the women. The women having a lot of sexual partners, it's pretty clear their pair bonding is impaired because they have their hypergamy tickled and they just can't settle. But that's another video. I think men are capable of coming back much easier. I don't know if it was easy, but much more readily. But in any case, coming to recovering from this has been a whole life's project. But, I don't regret it. What it's helped me to do is to wake up from bullshit, to really have a very kind of critical mind, think for myself kind of thing. I can give you an example. I mean, we're inundated with information. We are utterly and completely in a fog of information that doesn't allow us to assess what's real and what's not real. And it's all tied up in, is this a conspiracy theory? Is that an exaggeration? Is this failing to take into account this or that? But let's look at this coronavirus, Donald Trump, derangement syndrome that we're living through. Here comes a guy who gets elected. He takes it economically to China. That's pretty open. Most people would not argue that that's what he did. The tariff, the trade war, the negotiating of trade agreements, bringing back some of our industries, whatnot. That's not controversial. That's not in a fog. So we can take that as real. And then months later, something comes out of China that's a virus that has the effect of, first and foremost, of shutting down our economy. Now, you don't need a lot of pundits. You don't need a lot of, you don't need to read the Wall Street Journal, or you don't need a lot of analysis from, the reactionary right or the hard left or Fox News, or to see that this is a tit for tat. The human mind understands tit for tat. So there's a strong presumption that this is done on purpose. There's a strong there's also a strong presumption that the Chinese, the Communist Party, would be perfectly capable of doing something like this, to hit back. So there's a case where you could say, wait a minute, that's pretty clear. Now, with this supposition, maybe now I'll do a little reading. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying believe it. I'm not saying that's the end of it. But you can think for yourself. You can, you know that a lot of industry was exported to China, and that hollowed out kind of our industrial base, and that's how Trump got elected. You know that. When people with, the middle America without jobs finally said, to hell with this. So you can see that this fits in with an understandable narrative that isn't all mixed up, and that you can think through it yourself. And that would be something like, I can say, all this turmoil I came out of, all the phony beliefs I had, from this Unitarian indoctrination that I had to break out of, helped me break out of a lot of other narratives. I mean, the Unitarians are insufferable. I mean, look, this is something growing up that I didn't know. And it's rough to look at yourself and say, oh my God, that's how I was. The Unitarians think that they are forward-thinking, advanced, cutting edge, non-doctrinal, secular, open mind, non-judgmental to a fault. That's what I thought about myself. Why? Because we when we were young, we ran around naked, listened to rock music, and dropped acid. See, we're the open-minded ones. And nothing could be further from the truth. The Unitarian Universalism comes from two branches of New England Puritans. The Calvinist tradition and the Puritan tradition. And they start with doctrinal arguments about the Trinity, and they reject it. That's where the uni comes from in Unitarian. So they are directly opposed to Roman Catholics, like this other group that starts with a J, interestingly, but that's another argument. And the Universalists come out of a Calvinist tradition or a Puritan tradition that rejects the concept of, I believe it's a Calvinist, of an elect, that there's already a preordained elect number who are going to be saved. we're God's chosen. That sounds also kind of familiar. And they reject that, oddly enough, and they say, well, no, it's going to be a more open deal. But I don't think they really reject it. I think that the idea that they are the elect remains strongly, it's a strong undercurrent in the psychic makeup of the group. Because I had it. I thought my shit just don't stink. Everyone else was, kind of beneath us and needed to be guided. And, and this is where you get, oh, you should read more. Oh, you don't, oh, you should, God, haven't you read a book? Don't you know? I mean, at this point, we're just dripping with disapproval like this. And I went through a lot of years to get over that. And to say, wait a minute, we really can't thumb our nose at our own people and just looking outside for all the answers when, empirically, the West has come up with a lot of answers. And it's a lot of fucking people who want to come to our shores. And it's not because we're fucked up or we're racist or we're intolerant. And we're bending over backwards. And it's still not good enough. So I don't know if you have anything to add or to interject.
Well, I'm just thinking about how it all comes together, because what you talked a little bit about your background and how it's forced you to kind of look in the mirror and think about the impact that had on you and your relationships moving forward. And now you're showing examples of how you're thinking critically on the issues and not taking anything at face value.
Yeah.
What do you see for yourself moving forward? Because now I'd say, knowing you like I know you, you are pretty set in your ways and your opinions. Now, you've been there before, as you're saying right now. So is there room for flexibility, or now because of your life experience, you've made up your mind?
Well,
what's Uncle Andy's journey moving forward as far as looking
question.
inside?
That's a good question because well, you can see my new affiliation here, man. Those are supposed to be stormtrooper lightning bolts. I didn't want to put the crooked cross on there because no, that's a good question. The question is one of the life challenges of entering into the last third of your life is reification, and we see this in the archetype of the curmudgeon and the grumpy old man and that kind of thing. And I'm aware of that, and I need to watch out for that. But so what? There is a task of debunking your own myths. And I am involved in that. Now, what happens is those myths are kind of sacrosanct among the general population. I mean, what I see is that everybody's become a Unitarian. These people, you have soldiers being harangued by BLM people and being asked to take a knee. It's just like, damn, if our soldiers are Unitarians, we're fucked. We are so fucked. And, everybody's indoctrinated in this tolerance and kindness and blah, blah, blah. And really all this is an appeal for the victim to give up. I remember in the old days, they would joke when we had black humor, like not dark humor, didn't mean darky, it didn't mean Negro, black humor, where, someone would say, if you're getting raped, well, just, lay back and relax. And, that would make the feminists mad. Oh. Now you can't say that, but now that's what they're telling us. Just relax, just be dispossessed. Just our claim in your property, in your labor, and in your civilization is a legitimate claim, and you have to give up. And, I mean this from the POC claim. And so it's worrisome to me. And, these days, I'm pretty triggered. I admit it. Because I'm seeing all this Unitarian claptrap, come to fruition. And it's a bitter harvest, Um, my exploration is, maybe making this channel is part of that, because really I just want to yell at people. I want to be angry, and I want to tell them, stop, you got to pull your heads out of your collective bum. And, you know, it just, the easiest way to steal is for the victim to just give up, or to believe they should donate. And, that's an old Ayn Randian concept. And it's true. But it's true. And so if I want something from you, I can force it out of your hand, or I can make you believe you have to hand it over. And this task of making people believe they have to be altruistic in everything, in all things, it's been achieved. And I find it frightening. I find it really frightening that people can be so docile and so bamboozled. Western countries have been, nothing if not welcoming. The problem is the people we welcomed are not reciprocating. They come in with group loyalty, while we're playing the individualist, tolerant one, and we're atomized. And it's very hard for us to just say, no to riots, no to immigration. Things that were normal before are considered taboo. And I don't know if we have the specific gravity to defend our people and our ways and our customs in the legitimate ways that all countries do it. And that's worrisome. That's frightening. So I don't know what is to come. But,
well, what's your line though? What's your line? Because you say, the gates are open, and we're opening the doors to other cultures, and they have group loyalty. But where's the line? Are you going back to Syrian refugees a few years ago, or are you going back to after Irish immigration, Italian? I mean, I don't know. In the end, what does it mean? What does it mean that kind of the outsiders? How long are they outsiders? And if they continue to be grouped, I mean, in the end, America is pretty divided in terms of geography, race, likes, dislikes.
It's pretty divided.
Political leanings.
Well, because we've adopted sort of the Enlightenment conception of the primacy of the individual. And that's very good in a homogenous society, because we don't need a lot of checks and balances with regard to loyalty to the group, because there are not a lot of opportunities to be disloyal. But when you invite other groups in that are loyal to their own group, and meanwhile you're atomized, then that puts you in danger. And but where I think it's going is there's going to be a separation, because these claims being made, that we're all racist and we owe reparations, it always comes down to money, right? They want $15 trillion for reparations. Forget that we've spent the last 40 years making reparations. And the presumption is that there would be a sunset on the reparations. And of course, that never happened. And now they want more. Well, these are all claims into our property. And these claims are going to be in perpetuity. And that's not going to be tolerable. That's not going to be tolerated. So we are at a flexion point. And I think the healthiest thing is to separate. And maybe that's where I'm going, is that, look, let's just advocate for separation and have diplomatic relations like like we've had with, every other country,
Okay, but so what versions of that have been attempted in more recent American history? So we'd say, don't
Well,
ask,
we
don't
had,
tell. You have Jim Crow laws. I mean,
well, you
how
know,
does the separation work with one country in that sense?
yeah, well, it may not be one country at the end. I think people are naturally gravitating to people like themselves already. They're self-segregated. And, these inner cities have been given up. They've been given over. And I think when the police stand down, that is the message from the white people. We're giving it over to you. Now, there's a lot of, oh, we can't allow this to happen. And there's a lot of, and my view is let it happen, let it burn. I mean, and we had a segregated society. It really grinds my gears when I hear blacks lament the losses of their Black Negro League and their Black Stock Exchange, the Negro Stock Exchange, and their neighborhoods and their music and their traditions and their churches. Right. All of that was the parallel Black society during segregation. And of course, when the two societies had friction, the more powerful society tended to abuse. That is, it got justice and the other side didn't. But that's a motive for keeping your nose clean and keeping the borders clear, staying out of the business of the other. We can't really change the asymmetry of power. But when we
Well, but now it's such a kind of mixed country and mixed races and things like that. Where's the separation? Is it going to be go to the state you most politically aligned to? Is it going to be by skin color? Is it going to be by gender?
I think that's what it
your
is
impression?
already. That's what it is already. People just gravitating to the state they like the best and to the kind of people they want to be around. And I think that's already happening. The problem is it's being done tacitly. That is, we can't just openly admit, hey, you have racial interests and white people have racial interests. And, it's the whites who have no legitimacy with that. I think that's breaking down. It's gradually becoming part of the discourse. And of course, the people who reject it, they're really saying that they want to preserve the parasitical relationship of the host and the parasite. What would be wrong with, in the divorce, we say, I don't want to be with you anymore. What's wrong with that? I'm moving out of this town. Nobody, what's wrong with, separation to keep the peace? When kids are fighting, we separate them. You sit over there, you sit over there. But it turns out that if a group says, hey, I want to live with my own, and
Yeah, but when kids are fighting, we separate them and then we make them talk and shake hands. I mean,
that's
we
because
want to
we're
move
fascists.
forward in harmony.
That's because we're fascists. We say they got to get along. The kids, meanwhile, are grinding their teeth and just counting the days so that they can meet out back again and have it out. They're not fooled. That's what I find.
Okay, well let's try and bring this full circle then.
Sure.
So you talked about your roots in the Unitarian Church and the impact it's had on your adult life and how it's made you reflective. We talked about examples. And we talked about kind of how you see, let's say, the part 303 of your life. So what's the message that comes out of it all to you? How do you bring this all together? How do you conclude I'm gonna have to edit this piece too. How do you wrap it all together into one package that is Uncle Andy and makes it worth presenting to the world?
Well, maybe I'm not the only one that's kind of gone through this and has, had questions and, hard questions. And I've had to learn, the humility of having been wrong for a long time and of harboring, you know, really hostile ideas against my own people. And I think I discussed that in another video. And I want to atone, I think, for that. I ain't taking a knee. Fuck that. But I, I want to be able to share that a person having been brought up in this really vile stew of post-war hyper liberal lunacy, liberal progressivism, can still get out with their their integrity, with their mind intact, and still have a critical view and still be able to see through the fog, but at the same time, willing to engage. So I guess that's about the best I can do right now.
All right. Well, thanks a bunch, Uncle Andy. As usual, the opinions of Uncle Andy do not necessarily match the Andy families or nephew Johnny's. We love to hear him rant. We want him to get out of the system. We want him to be happy and healthy and live forever. Thanks again, Uncle Andy.
Here's my heart shape.